Emperor Akbar was in the habit of putting riddles and puzzles to his courtiers. He often asked questions which were strange and witty. It took much wisdom to answer these questions. Once he asked a very strange question. The courtiers were dumbfounded by his question. Akbar glanced at his courtiers. As he looked, one by one the heads began to hang low in search of an answer. It was at this moment that Birbal entered the courtyard. Birbal, who knew the nature of the emperor, quickly grasped the situation and asked, "May I know the question so that I can try for an answer?" Akbar said, "How many crows are there in this city?" Without even a moment's thought, Birbal replied, "There are 50,589 crows, my lord." "How can you be so sure?" asked Akbar. Birbal said, "Make you men count, my lord. If you find more crows, it means some have come to visit their relatives here. If you find less number of crows, it means some have gone to visit their relatives elsewhere." Akbar was pleased very much by Birbal's wit. There was once a shoemaker who, from no fault of his own, had become so poor that at last he had nothing left but a piece of leather just sufficient for one pair of shoes. In the evening he cut out the leather, intending to make it up in the morning, and as he had a good conscience, he lay quietly down to sleep, first commending himself to God. In the morning he said his prayers and then sat down to work, but, behold, the pair of shoes was already made, and there they stood upon his board. The poor man was amazed and knew not what to think, but he took the shoes into his hand to look at them more closely, and they were so neatly worked that not a stitch was wrong, just as if they had been made for a prize. Presently a customer came in, and as the shoes pleased him very much, he paid down more than usual, so much that the shoemaker was able to buy with it leather for 2 pairs. By the evening he had got his leather shaped out, and when he arose the next morning, he prepared to work with fresh spirit, but there was no need, for the shoes stood all perfect on his board. He did not wait either for customers, for 2 came who paid him so liberally for the shoes that he bought with the money material for 4 pairs more. These also, when he awoke, he found all ready made, and so it continued. What he cut out overnight was in the morning turned into the neatest shoe possible. This went on until he had regained his former appearance, and until he had become a prosperous man. One evening, not long before Christmas, as he had cut out the usual quantity, he said to his wife before going to bed, "Let us be awake this night to see who it is that helps us so kindly." His wife agreed and fastened up a light, and then they hid themselves in the corner of the room where hung some clothes which concealed them. As soon as it was midnight, in came 2 little mannikins who squatted down on the boards, and taking up the prepared work, set to work with their little fingers, stitching and sewing and hammering so swiftly and lightly that the shoemaker could not take his eyes off them for astonishment. They did not cease until all was brought to an end and the shoes stood ready on the table, and then they sprang quickly away. The following morning the wife said, "The little men have made us rich, and we must show our gratitude to them, for although they run about they must be cold, for they have nothing on their bodies. I will make a little shirt, coat, waistcoat, trousers and stockings for each, and will you make a pair of shoes for each?" The husband assented, and one evening, when all was ready, they laid presents, instead of the usual work, on the board and hid themselves to see the result. At midnight in came the elves, jumping about and soon prepared to work, but when they saw no leather, but the natty little clothes, they were at first astonished, but soon showed their rapturous glee. They drew on their coats and smoothing them down, sang, "Smart and naughty boys are we. Cobblers we'll no longer be, the little elves." And so they went on hopping and jumping over the stools and chairs and at last out of the door. After that evening they did not come again, but the shoemaker prospered in all that he undertook and lived happily to the end of his days.